Hello, BookTube, and welcome to Weekly Reads. This week I've read 2 books, and I've had a pretty positive reading week. And I'll get to the not entirely positive part after I talk about the books. So, let's get started. So the first book I read, and what I read over the weekend, was The Husband Hunters, American Heiresses Who Married into the British Aristocracy by Ada Courcy. This is, of course, a history of American heiresses marrying into the British aristocracy, and De Courcy goes into why this phenomenon happened. Beyond the sort of simplistic male British aristocrats needing money and American heiresses having the money and wanting a title for their trouble. De Courcy goes into how there was, during this period, an extended agricultural drought or agricultural depression, which, given that the British aristocracy at the time drew their wealth from their lands, their estates, that this sustained agricultural depression depressed their finances, coupled with the fact that most of them were by necessity spending large sums of money, either because that's how aristocrats always roll, or trying to oppress the Prince of Wales, who had incredibly expensive tastes. And on the American side, the push for wealthy young American women to marry into the British aristocracy coming not necessarily from them, but from their mothers, who saw marrying into the British aristocracy as a means to get into American high society, which in this period was even more exclusive than British high society. Basically, if Mrs. Astor did not know you, you had no luck. But if you were the mother-in-law of a duke or an earl, well, Mrs. Astor had to know you, whether she wanted to or not. So I thought that was fascinating, and the book goes into the biographies of a lot of these women and their mothers, and she also goes into some of the gender dynamics and politics of both the British aristocracy as well as the American plutocracy, which was quite fascinating. And of course she covers the end of this system. So yeah, it was quite a fascinating book. There are a few issues I had with the book. One is, I don't think De Courcy ever really goes into why the Astor set was attractive. I mean, I understand like how the Astor set came into being, how it was constructed, but never quite the appeal, or why nobody ever tried to make an alternative, such as, say, when one of the opera houses in New York that was a traditional sort of site of the, or place where the high society saw the opera, that when several plutocrats or nouveau riche couldn't get boxes, they went and built the Met. And another issue I had is, at the beginning of the book and towards the end, there are 2 scenes. Earlier in the book, De Courcy is describing New York, and how it was rather kind of polluted at the time. And then towards the end, it's actually London, or it shifts from New York to London. I thought that bit of confusion could have been cleaned up. And then towards the end, there's a description of a party in which an African American boy is in a hollowed out watermelon, and he basically bursts forth to pass out party favors. And how the boy is described in the text is, I'm not entirely sure, is because there are no quotation marks accompanying this description that I can remember, whether or not it's like from the period or not. And if it's not, well, yeah, because the boy's not described as an African American. And that kind of made me go, huh? So, yeah. Anyway. But for the most part, Husband Hunters was very interesting and fascinating. So over the course of the work week, I read Iron Curtain, The Crushing of Eastern Europe, 1944 to 1956 by Anne Applebaum. And this is the history of Soviet imperialism in Eastern Europe through occupation and through the Soviet dominance in the Communist Party. And so Applebaum goes through the period of Soviet occupation, how the Communist Party took over certain key aspects of civil society, the police, radio, youth groups, and subverted them and gradually took over. And once they took over, how they managed to maintain power, even though vast majorities of the population didn't like them and never liked them. And so this was a very fascinating, although heartrending read, because ultimately communism is a failed ideology, and certainly a failed governmental form, and also, self-deluding, because much of the misery in his book is caused by sustained self-delusion. My one critique of the book comes towards the epilogue, when Applebaum is talking about totalitarianism and how totalitarianism can destroy civil society, even civilizations that have lasted centuries, millennia. But I think the counter-argument to that is within the book itself, in that, well, yes, the communist regimes did stifle civil society, if not outright destroy it, but, totalitarian governments, and it's just, they're basically houses of cards that, they collapse so easily. As happened in 1956 and in the 1980s. So, yeah. But I really enjoyed Iron Curtain. It was a great book. So, what am I going to be reading this coming week? So, over the course of the weekend, and probably into the start of the work week, I'm going to read a bit of fantasy, Race the Sands by Sarah Beth Durst. This is about a fantasy sort of race, and I'll talk more about it after I've read it. And once I finish Race the Sands, I plan on tackling Map Collected in Last Poems by Wislawa Szymborska, which I picked up late last year. Szymborska is one of my favorite poets, so I'm looking forward to reading this. Now, hopefully I will be able to finish Map, or my goal is to finish Map by Wednesday, so I can wrap up March with Map. And if I do manage to have 2 extra days left in the week, I plan on reading some poetry. Right now, I'm hungering for poetry. I've been thinking of getting on the University of Chicago press sale that Peg of the History Shelf talked about a few weeks ago. She had a massive haul from the University of Chicago press sale, and I figured out how to get in on the sale myself. So I'm seriously considering buying some books. The problem is that while there are a lot of history books I would like, that what's really attracting me right now are some of the poetry collections I've seen on the University of Chicago Press website, and unfortunately those books are not on sale. But anyway, so I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do, and that might be something I'll talk about a bit more when I do March's book haul, when I preview April, and obviously you'll find out in April with my April book haul what happens. But anyway, if I do manage to have some time this week or next week after Map, there are 5 works of poetry I'm aiming to get to. I probably won't get to all of them. I might be able to get to 1 or 2, but I'm going to go ahead and name them all now, and we'll see which one I pick, or which ones I pick next Friday. So first up is Mezzanine by Zoe Hitzig. Next up is Tertulia by Vincent Toro. Third is The Carrying by Ada Limon. Fourth is Scribbled in the Dark by Simic. And fifth is Citizens of Beauty by John Senac. And we'll see which of the 5 I read on Thursday and Friday. So that wraps up pretty much what I've been reading, what I want to read. I know I haven't really talked a whole lot about what I've been watching. I've kind of gone on a TV watching slump after Jessica Jones season 2, and I haven't gone back to Ice Fantasy, so I'm going to have to start all over with it. And I haven't started on Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Probably do that sometime in the coming weeks, but tonight and probably for the rest of this weekend, I'm aiming to watch A London Spy starring Ben Whishaw. It's a modern spy thriller that came out a few years ago that I've been meaning to get to ever since it came on Netflix, and it's going to be leaving Netflix at the end of next week. Like I think Wednesday, it's the last day to watch it, so I need to get on it pretty quick. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off for now, and I will see you next week. Before then, a quick preview. There'll probably be a few tags coming up, and obviously on Wednesday there will be my March book haul. I could have done the book haul today, but I actually have 2 books coming in Saturday, I want to include them on this month's book haul. So it'll be Wednesday, and it's going to be pretty big. And then afterwards, there's the joy of reorganizing my science fiction and fantasy shelves. But that's what you get when you organize them in alphabetical order. So until next week, BookTube, thank you. Have a great evening and stay safe. And have a great weekend. If I didn't say that, I think it's that evening. I'm sorry, I'm rambling now, so I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Thank you, and have a great evening and weekend.